advantages from the part of leaser and leasee. In the second video, we are going to discuss about the types of leasing and different ways you can go for the leasing process. So let us brief the concept of leasing before going to the types part. Let us see. This is the concept of leasing. Lease is a contract between the leaser and the leasee for the hire of a specific asset for a specific period on payment of a specified rentals. Actually, it is we already discussed in the part 1 video. The concept of leasing is a contract between two parties, the leaser and the leasee, for the hire of a specific asset for a specific period on payment of a specific rental. It is actually a contract between two parties, the leaser and the leasee, for using a particular asset. It is for a specific period of time, and there will be a specific rental for using that particular asset. Then in case of leasing, there will be two parties. One is the leaser, is the person who is the owner of the property or equipment that is used by the second person, that is called a leasee. And the second one is the leasee, is the person who acquires the right to use the equipment, that is called a leasee. So these are two important parties in leasing, leaser and leasee. The owner of the equipment is called property is called the leaser, and the person who is acquiring or using the property is called the leasee. So these are the two parties in leasing. And once there will be a contract or agreement between these two parties, there is a agreement for a leasing, and that is called a lease agreement. So it is an agreement between two parties, that is leaser and leasee. And here that is it is actually the agreement to give the right to use a particular property or asset. That is the concept. So it is an agreement that in that agreement there will be a right that you are giving to use that particular property or asset. So giving the right to use the asset for not for that in the contract itself, it has mentioned that there will be a specific time duration for using that particular asset. So in this particular contract, there will be a particular periodic payment as rentals. That will be also in the part of a lease agreement. So once you are making an agreement between these two parties, that is the leaser and the leasee, it doesn't mean that there should be transferring the ownership right to the party, that is that they are using the particular asset, that is called a leasee, but it is a permission to use the asset, and that is a permission to use the asset for a particular specific period of time by giving that amount as lease rentals. So this is the concept of a lease agreement. Let us see what is lease rentals. So lease rental refers to it is actually once there will be an agreement between these two parties, and there is a consideration that is given by the leaser to the leasee is called the lease rentals. It is actually a consideration given by the leaser to the leasee is called lease rentals. It includes certain things like there is interest in the leaser's investment. Actually, leaser have certain type of investment for acquiring the asset. It is actually the interest that is given for the leaser's investment, that is also part of lease rental. And charges have borne by the leaser, such as repairs, maintenance, insurance, etc. We will discuss in the next part what are the types of leasing and what will be the types of charges, and all that things will comes in different types of situations. But here the charges is also the part of rentals. And depreciation is there, and depreciation actually decreasing the value of an asset due to wear and tear, passage of time, obsolescence, all these things. Depreciation is also the part of rentals. And other thing is the service charges. Service charges are also the part of rentals. Like what are the other thing service charges, that is the part of the particular asset that you are using, that will be also the part of lease rentals. Let us see the steps involving in leasing transaction. Before you are entering into a leasing transaction, there are certain types of steps or verification process that you have to undergo. So that steps we will discuss right now. So let us see, these are some of the steps that is involved in the leasing transactions. So before you are going for a leasing process, the leasee identify the need of the equipment and select the supplier. So whether the particular equipment is required for that particular specific purpose or not. So that is called identifying the need. So if it is, the need is a factor that will be leads for the of course the purchasing and the leasing process of an equipment or a machinery or whatever it is. So they will be identifying the need of purchasing the particular equipment, and based on which you have to select the supplier of that particular equipment on lease. So that is a first process. So after that, the leasee approaches to a leasing company. So you have to approach a leasing company or a leaser to lease the equipment he needed. So first you have to identify his requirement, based on which he select a supplier. Then he approaches the leasing company or the leaser to lease the equipment he needed. So he approached that particular person, and he based on his specification, he approached that particular supplier, and he mentioned what are the types of things that he required. So that is the second thing. So in this case, of course, he has to furnish certain information regarding the particular things, like the name and address of the leasee. So once you are making an agreement with the leaser, the leasee has to mention certain things like the name and address of the leasee. Of course, it is the contact address and then the details of the person who is acquiring that particular product. And the next one is detail about his business. So normally, which type of business is running, and what is the requirement of this particular asset on lease, that is also how to mention this particular one. Then the next one is name and address of the guarantor. So that is also the part of this particular type of agreement. Then another one is the description of the equipment. So description of the type of equipment here required. So what are the type specification, and all these things are also mentioned in this particular one. And another one is the name and address of the supplier and the quoted price. So normally the name and the address of the supplier. Supplier is a person who is in step 1, he identified the need of the particular equipment, and he go for identifying the supplier. So you have to mention the supplier name, address, and all the details in all the details. In addition to that, you have to mention the quoted price of the particular lease equipment or a product. Then after that, the place in which the particular thing has to be taken or installed, so that you have to identify, and the duration of the lease is also you have to mention. So the place and the duration of the lease, maybe it will be for a period of 1 year or 2 year or 5 year, whatever it is. So all these things you have to mention in cases of a leasing process. So this is the third step you have to do before doing a leasing process. And the fourth one is like this. So once you are going through all these things, the leaser examine the proposal after receiving the particulars from the leasee. So there will be an evaluation process from the part of the leaser regarding the things that is submitted from the part of the leaser. So regarding especially in the part of using the asset, the paying the rentals, time period, all these things you have to evaluate. So you have to moreover you have to go through the credit worthiness and its repaying capacity. So normally what we are discussing about the credit management situation, we are seeing that there will be 5 C's: character, capacity, condition, collateral. These are the C's of credit management. So you have to go through the credit worthiness. So once his credit worthiness is okay, normally he will only if you are satisfied with the credit worthiness of the leasee, then only you give the particular equipment for us lease. So that is credit worthiness, and of course that will be influenced by the rent repayment situation. Rent payment situation is of course influenced by the capacity of the particular capacity of the leasee. So that is another factor that you have to take into account. Then another one is the leaser and lessee enter into an agreement. It is going through the four steps. After that, you go for entering into an agreement between these two parties, the leaser and the lessee. There will be an agreement between these two parties, that is the leaser and the lessee, and it contains the terms and conditions of a lease. Of course, what we discussed in this initial part, the same thing will be there in the agreement part, such as the lease period is there, lease rental and renewal of lease situations, or if some repairs and all these things will be there, what will be the situation of repairs and other things, then insurance payment situations. So some other expenses incurred, how will they manage that other expenses? All these things will be there in cases of a lease agreement. So that is also the part of a lease agreement situation. And after that fifth stage, you will go for the sixth one. After the agreement is signed by both the parties, that leaser and lessee, the leaser requests the manufacturer to supply the asset to lessee. So he can directly give the asset to lessee, or he can request the manufacturer. If it is taken from the manufacturer, he can request the manufacturer to supply the assets to the lessee. Maybe in this case, two options are there. If the product is with the leaser, he can give the product to the lessee. That is the one option. If it is taken from the manufacturer, he can request the manufacturer, after the agreement, he can request the manufacturer to supply the assets to the lessee. So that is another option that is there in that is the another last step in cases of a leasing process. So these are the 5 steps that you have to fulfill before we are going for a leasing agreement. Let us move to the next part. What are the different types of leasing? So certain variations in the elements of a lease classifies into different types, such elements. We are discussing some of the important elements, some of the important classification of or some of the different types of lease situations. It is based on certain types of criteria. So it is based on a particular thing that is called the degree of ownership, risk factor, rentals, then payment situations, then reward transfer. That is, of course, the payment situation. All these things will be a parameter for evaluating the types of leasing. In addition to that, there will be number of parties involved in a particular lease situation, and the location of the both parties, the leaser and the lessee, and the equipment supplier. Maybe the manufacturer is there and the third party is there, the equipment supplier is there. So where will be the location of these three parties, the leaser, lessee and the equipment supplier? That is another parameter for classifying the lease situation. And the main players, that is the leaser and the lessee. So based on all these things, we can classify the lease into different categories, and there will be situations like what we have discussed in the previous video, like some cases we are purchasing the particular product, there will be a chance of technological obsolescence, because maybe some sort of outdated of technology is going to happen. So if you are investing a huge amount for a purchase process of a big equipment or things like that, so you have to spend a huge amount for the purchase process. In addition to that, once it is the technology is obsolete, you have to suffer a huge loss. So here there will be an option for taking the goods on lease. If it is technologically outdated, he can cancel the agreement and he can go for a purchase or take it on lease of an equipment based on new technologies. So based on which also there should be a classification process. So let us see what are the different types of lease situation. So lease lease agreements we can broadly classified into two types. There are different types of leasing situations are there. Main classification is two types, and the first one is called the financial lease and the second one is called the operating lease. These are two types of leasing situations. Lease agreements can be classified into two types or two categories. The first one is called the financial lease and the second one is called the operating lease. And let us see what is a financial lease. Here, a financial lease is a method used by business for acquisition of equipment with the payment of a structured over time. So with payment structured over time, that is the important characteristics of a financial lease. So acquisition of equipment, there should be an acquisition process of equipment on lease with a payment structured, it will be over a period of time. That is the importance of a financial lease situation. So in addition to that, it gives a proper definition. It can give it expressed as an agreement wherein the leaser receives lease payment for covering the ownership cost. Actually, you have a particular ownership right is there from the part of leaser. For covering the ownership right, for having the ownership right, he is getting some amount of cost as lease rentals. So in addition to that, you are thinking about the other factors like maintenance expenses, tax factors, and payment of insurance and all these things. The leaser hold the responsibility. The owner have the responsibility to pay the maintenance expenses, tax, and insurance on all these things regarding the part of this particular property. So that is the another important thing for a financial lease. So you have to remember, in case of financial lease, the leaser holds the responsibility of maintenance expenses, tax, and all other financial charges for a particular property or asset. So normally financial leasing is a contract that is involving a payment over a longer period. Normally there will be a period of leasing is a long period of time, and a long time lease, and the leasee will be paying more than the cost of the property or equipment to the leaser in form of a lease charges. So that is another thing. You are paying some amount to the leaser from the part of leasing to the leaser. The amount of payment is normally it will be long time use. The cost of payment, that is lease rental, that is paying is more than the cost of the particular equipment, but there is no initial cost of investment for purchasing that property or asset. That is the importance of this type of leasing situation. So in addition to that, normally it is irrecoverable. So it is irrecoverable. So in this type of leasing, the leasee has to bear all the cost, and leaser does not render any service. So it is a part of the lease. He has to bear all the cost, and the leaser does not bear any type of service. So that is another characteristics of this type of leasing. So let us see, based on this discussion, what are the important features of a financial lease. So in this case, the leasee and leaser are the two parties. The leasee is the owner or the borrower. Leasee is the borrower or the customer. Select the asset, a particular asset or property or software or equipment that is taken from the part of a particular leaser. And the leaser is a financing company who purchases that asset, is giving the property or asset to the leasee. So two parties are there. Leasee is the borrower or customer who select a particular asset, equipment, software, whatever it is taken from the part of the second party, the owner, that is called the leaser. And a leaser is the actual owner of the particular property. Then leasee has a right to use this particular property or asset for that particular agreement time period. And in addition to that, leasee pays a series of installments for rentals for using the particular asset, that is called lease rentals. Payment situation is also there. And leaser recovers a large part, almost complete cost of the asset, in addition to the earnings interest from the rentals paid by the leasee. So he's collecting that part by part collection process there, as in the form of lease rentals from the leasee while using this particular asset. So that is also the another characteristics of this particular leasing process. Then the next one is the leasee has an option. So after using a particular time period, maybe if the leasee feels that he want to acquiring the ownership of this particular asset, so leasee has an option of acquiring the asset. So that means the option of purchasing purchasing that particular asset, maybe paying the lease rental. So after paying the lease rental, after a certain time period, you use an option of purchasing the property or purchasing the asset. So that is also an option for this particular type of leasing process. Then let us see what is operating leasing. So in case of operating leasing, is a contract. Maybe there will be leaser and leasee is there. Owner is the leaser and user is called leasee, and there will be a particular time duration is, of course, it is there, and it is normally it is shorter than the economic life of the asset. Normally maybe it is life of asset is 10 years, it maybe it will be 7 or 8 or 9 years. It will be an agreement between these two parties. So here there is no transfer of ownership. There is no transfer of ownership right in case of a operating leasing situation. So there is in this case the leaser gives a right to use the leasee. So the leasee is paying certain types of rental in the form of installment and is returning the asset after that particular agreed period of time. As we mentioned, after 7 years there will be an agreement between leaser and leasee for a 7-year period. After 7 years the leasee has to return the asset to the leaser. Then it is a short-term lease or a contract between these two parties. There will be a rent parties there, and he has to pay the rent, and the leaser has retained the right of ownership of the particular asset. So normally it is a period of less than 1 year in length. Leasee always maintain the ownership. So that is important characteristics. And operating lease is also cancelable. So it can have been a cancelable clause in case of operating lease, and he can cancel that particular lease agreement. That is another important characteristics of operating leasing. So these are some of the advantages of operating leasing. Like operating lease provides greater flexibility to the companies. They can replace, update their equipment more often. So the technological obsolescence is there. He can go for replace that things with the newly technological things. That is the first option is there. Then there is no risk of obsolescence, as there is no transfer of ownership. So because once you are not giving the ownership right, so you are is only using the particular equipment, so there is no situation of obsolescence. And accounting situation, the treatment of operating lease is compared to financial lease. If you are comparing, the treatment process is accounting treatment of operating lease is comparatively very easy and simpler thing. And lease payments are tax deductible. That is the another advantage. So lease payment, there will be an option of tax deductibility. So that is another advantages of operating leasing. Based on this discussion, we can compare the operating lease with the financial lease. In case of operating lease, the first part is in case of ownership, it is with the leaser, and the second one, financial lease, that is to be a transfer option is there, and there is no such transfer option in case of operating lease. And the second one is in case of risk and rewards related to the asset. Risk factor is with the leaser, and in case of financial lease, it will be in the part of the leasee. And in case if the leaser want to purchase the particular asset, there is no option of purchase process in case of operating leasing, and there should be a purchase option in case of financial leasing. So that is the important thing. There is no purchase option in case of operating leasing, and there should be have a purchase option in case of financial leasing. So expenses part, the expenses is borne by the leaser. So operating lease part, all the expenses are to be borne by the leaser, and in case of financial lease, all the expenses are borne by the leasee. So that is another thing, difference. So running cost of running and maintenance cost part, no running and maintenance cost part in cases of operating lease. So we are comparing to operating lease, the cost factor is very high. The running and maintenance cost factor is very high in case of a financial lease. And tax benefit part, so there is to be no depreciation or a tax part has to be claimed in case of operating lease, and interest and depreciation both can climb in case of a financial lease. In case of tax calculation process, the depreciation can climb in case of operating lease, and interest and depreciation both can be claimed in case of a financial lease. So these are the important difference between operating lease and financial lease. So we have discussed the two important types of leasing. In addition to that, there are some other methods of leasing. Let us go for discussing some other methods. And the first one, in that case, the first one is the leveraged or non-leveraged leasing. So this is the first method. That is in case of a normal leasing process, is third one, and other method it is the first one. So in this case, the value of asset is acquired maybe for a huge amount, which is not possible for a leaser to finance. So in cases of the leverage leasing is acquiring the asset for a huge amount. So it's the important characteristics, and it is not possible for the leaser to finance. So that is very difficult to finance for a particular thing. In that case, is giving the asset on lease. So this is the third method, and here the leaser involved one more financier who will have the charge to over the leased asset. So in addition to leaser and leasee, there will be a financing party is there, that is also in part of this type of leasing process. And this one is another type of leasing process, conveyance type of leasing. So long period process that we are using this type of leasing process for a long period of time. So it is normally they will be conveying the ownership title of the leasee. So intention of conveying the ownership title of the leasee. So there will be a conveying that the ownership title has to be transferred to this particular party or not. That is to mentioned in this type of a leasing process. So that is a fourth type of leasing, and this is another method of leasing, sale and leaseback. So if in this case the company owning some asset and that has to sell to another party, that is actually he will be coming as a leaser. He sells to a third person and he is taking it back. That is called sale and leaseback. In this case, the company owning the asset and sells to the leaser. So the leaser pays immediately for the asset but lease the asset to the seller. So if A and B are two parties, A sells assets to B, and after that A has to taken it back the same asset on lease from B. So the same situation is happened in case of a sale and a leaseback. The seller of the asset becomes the leasee. Seller of the asset becomes the leasee, and the buyer is actually called the leaser. So the asset is remain with the seller, and the ownership is with the buyer. So actually, this in this case, the asset is given. Actually, the owner has some asset and he is giving to the next person, that is the second person, and he is taking the asset back on lease. So the ownership with the second person and asset is with the first person. So that is the important characteristics of this type of leasing. So normally the advantages of this type of leasing is like this. If he is not a particular type of funding or any other problem for acquiring the asset or using that asset for this time period, he can sell the asset and he can take it on lease and he can use it for a long period of time. So that is the option that is giving in this type of leasing. Then another one is full and non-payout leasing process. Here the full payout lease is one in which the leaser recovers the full value of the leased asset by the way of leasing. So here the leaser recovers the full value of a leased asset by the way of leasing. So there will be is taking the full value of asset during the lease time period itself. So this is the important advantages of a full and non-payment payout leasing process. And in case of non-payment payout lease process, the leasee out the same asset over and over again. He can use the out the same asset over and over again. That is another option that is giving. Then the specialized service leasing is another category of leasing. Here the leaser or the owner of the asset is a specialist of the asset which he is leasing out, and he is not only leases out but also gives a specialized personal service to the lessee. So these are the advantages of a specialized service leasing. So these are the examples like electronic goods, automobiles, air conditions. All these things are the specialized service leasing examples. And another one is net and non-net leasing process. Non-net leasing, the leaser is in charge of maintenance, insurance and other incidental expenses in case of this particular type of a leasing process. There will be leaser in charge. Actually, leaser has to pay the expenses of the asset that is acquiring or is taking from the part of is giving the that asset to the lessee. So he is actually maintaining, he is paying the maintenance charges, insurances and all other expenses, even if the asset is given to the next person, that is called the lessee. And here the leaser is not concerned about the maintenance expenses, and is maintenance of insurance and other expenses is paid by the in case of a net lease. So the difference is, in case of non-net lease he has to pay all these expenses. In case of net lease he is not connected with the above mentioned this particular type of expenses. It's not at all paying that particular amount. The leaser confers only to financial services. Then the next one is sale aid leasing. Sale aid leasing. In this case of leasing, the leaser enters into any tie-up with an or agreement with the manufacturer for the marketing. It is called sale aid leasing. So supporting the sale and all, there will be a leasing process. So manufacturer, actually it's an agreement with the manufacturer for a market his product through the leasing operation. So actually it is a process of marketing the goods through the leasing operation. That is the type of leasing process. So this is called sale aid leasing process. Then cross-border leasing process is the another type of leasing. So this is actually the leasing process between two nations. That is, in between two nations there will be a leasing process. So like in case of some areas like aviation, shipping and other things, there will be an agreement between two nations will be there. So technological transfer is also the part of this type of leasing process. So this is a leasing agreement between two countries, between two persons or of two countries. That is the agreement of a cross-border leasing process. And the situation or the domicile of the two parties, that is the leaser and the lessee, are in two countries. That is the importance of this type of leasing. And here the lessee says to the cross-border lease situation, he has to pay the amount of cross-border leasing situation. That is also the importance of this type of leasing process. And next one is a tax-oriented leasing process, where here the lessee not a loan or security, but they qualify as a lessee, it will be considered as a tax-oriented leasing process. So this is a tax-oriented leasing agreement between the two parties, the leaser and the lessee. And import leasing is another type of leasing. The company providing the equipment for lease may be located in any foreign country, but the leaser or lessee may be belongs to the same country. So the company is providing the equipment is there from a foreign country, any outside country, and the leaser and lessee will be in the same country. So this is the importance of import leasing. The equipment is more or less imported. So the things or asset that is used by the lessee has to import it from a foreign country and is giving to the lessee. So that is the importance of import leasing. And international leasing is a type of leasing, is just like a cross-border leasings. So it is between two different countries. It is almost same as what we have discussed. The cross-border leasing, there will be two countries, two persons are there. So two persons from two different countries are there in case of international leasing. So the same thing in case of cross-border leasing also. Almost it is same as a cross-border leasing process. Then another one is a sale aid lease. Under this agreement, the leaser agrees with the manufacturer to market his product through his leasing operation. So there will be an option is giving to the manufacturer for market his product through the leasing operation. So that is the advantages of a leasing situation. So in this case, the manufacturer, once you are selling the product, is selling the product or by the lease agreement, he is paying certain amount as a commission. So that is the importance of a sale aid leasing. Then another one is a small ticket and big ticket leases. Small ticket and big ticket leases, the leasee of the asset in small values generally calls it as a small ticket leases, and if it is large value it is called a big ticket leasing. So asset is giving in small value, that is called a small ticket leasing. If the asset's value is larger or a higher value asset, then it is called a big ticket leases. So let us see what after we are discussing about all these types of leasing situations, let us see what are the different types of lease rent structure maybe in the giving from the part of a leaser to the leasee. So these are different types of lease rental payment structures, and the first one is the equation plan. So it is actually the equal annual plan. It is not equation plan, it is equal annual plan. So here it is the annual lease rent is payable is divided to equal amount by applying the annuity factor for a specific period of lease. So you have to divide the lease rental in equal annual plan. We have to divide the equal amount by applying the annuity factor for a specific period of lease at a predetermined interest taken as discount rate. As a predetermined interest rate taken as a discount rate. So this is the importance of a equal annual plan. So here there will be a part of dividing that particular amount into equal installment and applying the annuity factor for a specific period of lease at a predetermined interest rate. There should be a predetermined interest rate factor is also there, and it taken as a discount rate. So it will be taken as a discount rate. Then the second one is a stepped up plan. So annual lease rent is going on increasing every year with a specified rate of increase. Or there will be a specific rate of increase. Every year there will be an increase in this particular amount. So increasing every year at a specified rate of increase in case of a stepped up plan. Then the next one is the balloon payment plan. So here the annual rent is payable in the initial year would be less. So in the previous one there will be an increase. Here the annual rent will be paying the initial year, it will be less, fixed up such a way that to meet the normal amount of comparative to the cost of investment. So initially the cost of investment for purchasing starting a business, there will be initial cost of investment will be more. So that is why during the initial time of leasing situation the payment of installment will be comparatively less, but at the end of the year the amount will be increasing the level of the payment of installment during the end of the year. So that is important. The initial year the amount there will be initial year would be less, and after that when it will be, for example, it will be for a period of 5 years. So during the first year the amount of rental will be comparatively low. So when it will comes to the 5th year the rate the lease amount will be very high. So that is the importance of this particular balloon payment system. And another one is a deferred payment plan. So in this case of situation, the lease rent need not paid for the initial specified period of time. There is no need of paying the lease rent for the initial specified period of time. So you have to pay the subsequent time period. Then, for example, if it is 5-year period, the first year you don't want to pay any lease amount. So after that, once your business is okay, you are flourished in the market, so you can pay the lease amount. So lease rent is paid in the subsequent years in equal annual amount will be cover the cost of financing for the deferred payment period also. But once you are paying the amount, you have to consider that is deferred payment period is also considered. So based on which you have to refix that lease rental repayment situation. So these are the 4 important types of repayment plans in cases of a leasing situation. So these are topic we discuss here is what is